You can press got it or leave it. But thank you again for joining us for our 2024-2025 FAFSA Simplification presentation. My name is Jessica Barco, and I'm serving as our Assistant Vice President for Student Affairs, overseeing financial aid, our Titan One Stop, and the Scholarship Office. All right, and we're here today to discuss what FAFSA simplification is. And in a nutshell, I did mention that what I will be sharing moving forward are some of the biggest changes that have occurred to the FAFSA over the last 40 years. So these are big changes that are going to be impacting our processes and our work as we know it in many ways. And we just wanted to introduce to you some of the more salient ones, or some of the ones that may impact our work the most. Please note that this is not exhaustive, that there are a lot more changes, and that our website, our financial aid website, on our landing page, the orange bar, has a lot more information that is more robust. But for the intention of this presentation, we've simplified this presentation on FAFSA simplification to only have just the more pressing and more salient themes. So first of all, I'd like to say, what is the FAFSA? In case anyone is new to this conversation at all, please know that this session is intended for all, for those that are just learning about it and those that know a lot about it as well, and those that are somewhere in between. So the free application for federal student aid, that's where we get the acronym of FAFSA. It's basically the federal application where students apply to be considered and eligibility determined for them to be able to receive federal student financial aid programs. And what is FAFSA simplification? Well, FAFSA simplification was actually an act that was signed into law starting since 2021. So what we're about to experience for 2024-25 is actually over 3 years of small incremental changes with the FAFSA that may not have been felt as much as the sweeping changes that are about to occur for 2024-25, but it's actually not new. It's actually finalizing with this actual update to the FAFSA form and to some of the items that we're talking. But this actually began in 2021, and it was signed into law. As a result of that, there are certain things that are going to happen, and these are federal standards and federal regulations. So what I'm sharing with you isn't something that is intended by Kelsey Fullerton's Office of Financial Aid, but something that's happening at the federal level with the Federal Department of Education. And we are complying and moving along to make sure that we are educating our campus community and that our students are ready for these changes. So what will change? Everything. So the setup, the technological setup behind the scenes, the form itself that students use to access the FAFSA form, the need determination, how we determine eligibility for a student, the process by which students apply, and even access to the form itself will change. Okay. So speaking of change, the changes that are coming to the 2024-25 FAFSA, the first change and most significant is that the application is expected to open in late December 2023. Again, because this has been signed into law, this is something that must happen. According to the law, it must be launched by January 1st, 2024. So this is why that December date is that looming date that's there. No one knows what day it's going to open or exactly what week it's going to open. We are all anticipating and waiting, and we're all in the same boat. All the universities planning and waiting for that date. So the best that we're doing is preparing our students and our community for that date when it does arrive. The FAFSA typically opens on October the 1st. So as you can see, there is a government delay at this time with the application. And the California priority deadline is typically March 2nd, but our California governor and our state has decided to extend the priority date to April the 2nd. This allows our students just an additional month to be able to complete their FAFSA application, as well as their California Dream Act application, also known as the CADAA, which we're going to be talking about and discussing very soon. But just keep in mind, it'll launch sometime in December, and the priority deadline will be April the 2nd. The priority deadline is very important. It is not a suggested or recommended deadline. That is a hard deadline for the state of California for the students to be able to receive the aid they're actually eligible for when it comes to state aid programs such as the Cal Grant program, the State University program, and so on and so forth. Those, the student must complete it by that date to receive the aid that they're eligible for. If they complete it late, they are no longer a priority student and being considered for those types of state aid. So thank you for keeping that in mind. So changes to the FAFSA, let's go over those. We have 4 of them that we'd like to share with you. And the first one is that it is a simplified application. So ideally, students are going to be experiencing less questions. And as they experience less questions, there's going to be also the skip logic into the application. And similarly, as students have seen before, if they're independent versus dependent, it'll guide them to specific questions. In that same way, there are a number of questions that are going to be leading the students one way or the other way, or omitting entire sections of the FAFSA based on how the student is completing it. This is supposed to shorten the time to the completion and make it a lot more simple and have less questions overall. Second is the expanded eligibility for the federal Pell Grant. This is what we're calling Pell Grant expansion. So the goal is that more students will be eligible for the federal Pell Grant, and even those that have been eligible in the past will likely be eligible for even greater amounts. So this is good news for our students. Second are reduced barriers for applicants. So this is where the name Better FAFSA or FAFSA Simplification is coming from. The reason that it's reduced barriers for the applicants is because it's supposed to connect now directly to the IRS, where each contributor's information is coming directly from the IRS onto the FAFSA form. When we do this, we have less errors, less need for verification of those financials because the information is coming directly from the IRS. And that is the intention of the federal government in that being the simplified process. So less administrative burden. And then fourth, one of the biggest changes to share with you is that we are changing from expected family contribution, also known as EFC, to student aid index, known as SAI. To you, what that would mean is that our students that have the highest financial need means that they have the lowest expected family contribution. That means that their family can contribute $0 to their education, right? That's our highest need student. For the purposes of this presentation, I would like to share with you that the SAI, for the first time in history, is going to have a negative number. So now, like what it would be the equivalent of your 0 EFC student, it's going to be an SAI of 0 to a range of negative 1,500. So from 0 to negative 1,500 is our highest need students who will be considered for the highest amount of aid. And just keep in mind that both tools are doing the same thing. They are in index numbers used to measure student need based on the information that's on the FAFSA to determine what the student's eligibility and financial aid programs will be. Okay, so what about the California Dream Act? Some of you might be wondering, what about our dreamers? And I'm glad that you're wondering that and asking those questions, because so are we in the Office of Financial Aid here at Cal State Fullerton. We have almost 1,000 dreamers at Cal State Fullerton, and we are here to serve them and we are here to support them. And we want to make sure that we're educating our campus community to know that they're here too. And that there are changes coming to the California Dream Act application. Some of them are going to mirror the FAFSA and some of them are not. So in this presentation, and for the purpose of this presentation, we'll be sharing a few of them as well. So what is the California Dream Act application, also known as the CADAA? It's the state application for our undocumented students, our students that meet AB 540 eligibility, our students with U visas, our students with TPS status. And just so you know, this is not an exhaustive list. I do recommend, if you'd like to see what that exhaustive list is, to go onto our CSAC website, our California Student Aid Commission with the state of California, and it's going to have the eligibility and the determination for students to determine whether they should be completing the California Dream Act application or the FAFSA, for example, the FAFSA that is for our U.S. citizens or eligible non-citizens. And again, students can go onto the FAFSA to determine if they have one of those visas, for example, that would qualify as an eligible non-citizen, right? But coming back to the CADAA application, it's generally at Cal State Fullerton, this is what we see for the students that are completing the CADAA and that are doing it correctly. It's our undocumented students, our DACA students, our deferred action arrival students meeting AB 540 eligibility, the U visa, and the TPS. Okay, so the changes coming to the California Dream Act application is that it's also expected to launch December 2023, just like the FAFSA. It usually launches earlier, just like the FAFSA, but it's going to be delayed as well. The priority deadline has also been extended to April the 2nd. So please note that priority deadline. This is a hard deadline. It is not a suggestion or a recommendation. And this deadline mostly will impact our dreamers the most. And the reason for that is that this is a state application, not a federal application. Our California Dream Act students are not eligible for federal student aid as the law stands now. As a result of that, and due to California state legislation, laws were passed where our California Dreamers get to have California state aid, like the California grant, like the state university grant. However, they need to complete the application by this new priority deadline, typically March 2nd, but now with the extension, April the 2nd. If they are late for any reason, they will not be considered for any of these state aid programs that I have mentioned. And they stand to lose the most because they don't have any federal aid coming up as a backup, the way that our U.S. citizens or eligible non-citizens would have. So I encourage you all to please specially note these deadlines, and especially for our dreamers, as if they do not apply on time, then this aid is off the table and there is no federal aid at that point. So changes to the application here are the same. We're changing from EFC, expected family contribution, to the SAI, again with that negative 1,500 number. It can be a more significant need, and it's going to be used to determine that type of analysis versus a student that is zero and has the most need versus a student that is like really needy, and the institution can use that even to make their own decisions. And there are some programs that we have here at Cal State Fullerton, such as EOPS, such as housing, admissions, that have been using the EFC number in different ways. And now we're going to be using the SAI and considering that zero EFC now to be a number that ranges anywhere from $0 to negative $1,500. Two is the inclusion of race, ethnicity, and gender questions. That is something that's new to the California Dream Act application. Third is the AB 540 affidavit now being included in the California Dream Act. In case you're wondering what that is, it's information that Cal State Fullerton uses to determine in-state residency for in-state resident tuition purposes for our dreamers. So that's important. And then lastly, the parent signature process is undergoing changes for this 2024-2025 aid year. All right. So what are we doing about it here at Cal State Fullerton? I'm glad you asked, because we've been thinking about this for the last 6 to 9 months and been speaking to our leaders about it. And our leaders are in action and mobilizing all of the folks at Cal State Fullerton that we need to make sure that our students are ready. So we're glad to share with you just a little bit of what's been done behind the scenes thus far. So in September, we wanted to make sure that we began with our student communication and information at large. So we had website update changes for our financial aid landing page. So if you've been to our financial aid landing page, it's the orange bar on top. It now says 2024-2025 financial aid updates. And we're going to go ahead and include that link in the chat for you all so that you can have access to that after this presentation. But just note that on that website, the Office of Financial Aid has done a robust work of listing out many more changes around the FAFSA and the California Dream Act application, as well as how students can prepare for those and some other larger CSU changes in general that students can prepare for. In September, our wonderful and one and only Vice President of Student Affairs, Dr. Seguera, sent an email to our student body letting them know about some of these CSU changes, as well as the FAFSA launch date and it being a later launch date in the month of December 2023 for the 2024-25 aid year. In addition, we've established a financial aid and IT working group. It's our Tiger team, and we are meeting weekly, and we're really grateful to have, again, we have amazing IT partners. I shared and mentioned some of their names earlier today, but they are the real heavy lifters and real heroes behind this, getting us ready for this setup so that our students can experience, hopefully not major changes as they experience it, but just experience it as the regular FAFSA that they're completing, and that the heavy lifting is really being done behind the scenes, and that the students are able to experience an application that they complete and fill out. And that is what our goal is and what our hope is. Our wonderful IT team has hired a consultant on the technical side to deliver some technical specifications, and financial aid team on the operations side is also hiring a consultant to help with detailing the specifications on what the financial aid requirements are, to deliver that to our technical team for the technical solutions, and make sure that we are having timelines that work for our campus partners, for our community partners that are having students transfer and are high school students as well as our students here at Cal State Fullerton. We know that a lot of different constituencies are waiting on the development of this FAFSA simplification, as well as the awarding packages that come in the spring. So for October, that's this month right now, we've had our community partner update. So we've actually met with community college partners, guidance counselors, high school guidance counselors, organizations, community leaders, and sharing this information with them as well, and asking for their collaboration and timeliness when it comes to some of the action items that we're going to also ask you all to collaborate with us as well. And then we're also having our campus partner sessions, which is going on right now. Thank you for being here. And that's for our faculty, for our staff, for our administrators, and anyone that's internal to CSUF that this presentation is geared towards. In addition, in the month of November, we are going to be hosting a lot of informational webinars for our students. So November is when we turn inward towards all of our students here at Cal State Fullerton and invite any prospective students that are considering Cal State Fullerton. We're going to be hosting a number of sessions for our students, again, prospective and current students, informing them of what's about to change. We don't want to just gloss over these big sweeping changes and do a webinar on how to complete the FAFSA without addressing what's changed. So just know that for the students, we're going to be having sessions that talk to them about the major changes that are going on, how they need to respond and address those. And then the Office of Financial Aid is going to walk them through the steps on the completion of the FAFSA, the signing of it, that FSA ID, and then making sure that we're available to respond to any questions as well. So just note that November will be our big month for just educating our student population and our student body. So to come soon. December is that launch month, if you recall. So in that launch month, sometime in December, whenever it launches through April, we are going to host a series of events, in-person events. If you've seen us before the COVID pandemic began, we were on the Titan Walk. We were meeting with students. We had different tables, iPads, wheels, prizes, all kinds of different things. You're going to see that happen again, where we are going to let students know that this is for them, that we welcome them, that we're here to answer any questions that they have, that we're here to settle any doubts that they might have, or any concerns that are coming because of these changes, making sure that we're available to them and that they can meet face to face with us and put a face to a name, and that they feel that this process is for them, that they can succeed in this, and that we're going to do it together. We're going to have virtual events, Zoom drop-in hours, platform Q. These are semi-live webinars where it's a recording, but all the chats and Q&A is happening live, as well as on-demand tutorials. We're going to be producing content such as this session that's going to be on our YouTube channel, the one that we did for community partners, and a lot of other topics, scholarships, summer aid, a lot of other things. So just know that the Financial Aid Office does have a YouTube channel where we are putting on content, and we'll be continuing to curate and add more content for your consumption. Okay, so collaboration and timeliness is required. So this is where we need your help. So our Titans need our support. We know that these are big changes that are happening, and we're working strongly with our IT team behind the scenes to set up the support for this to happen. But we don't want the students to have to guess or figure any of this out. We want this to be as simple and seamless as possible for them, acknowledging that some of these changes are big, acknowledging that we might need to provide more support for accessibility, but at the same time, trying to make this as seamless as possible for them. So just know that a lot of the work is being done behind the scenes, but we'll need your support on the front of the scene, basically, which is helping out with students. So the way that you can support us is by promoting the FSA ID. What is the FSA ID? It's called the Federal Student Aid Identification. It's an identification number, and we encourage all of the students to complete the FSA ID, and all of the parents as well. Students do not need to wait until the December launch to complete their FSA ID, and the FSA ID is a whole process in and of itself. So we encourage you, our students, our community partners, to help us with this. If there's anything that I can ask for your support because of this presentation, is to help us get all of the students to complete their FSA ID. That is part one. If they've got that down, they're going to be ready and off to the races as soon as the FAFSA launches. So we ask for your support because this process can be a little involved. So I want to be very honest with you about the FSA ID. It has several steps to it, and it's a change that the students haven't seen as in the past. So at this point, every parent is going to need to have their own FSA ID. for every parent to have their FSA ID and the student to have their FSA ID, you need to have individual email accounts. So individual email accounts to verify individual identities. This isn't something that has been done before. And often folks are just trying to remember their FSA ID. Well, now they're going to have to remember their email, their FSA ID, their password for the email, and make sure that they have all of that information ready when the FAFSA comes out. I do want to mention a very sensitive and very delicate caveat. We encourage all students that have parents that have social security numbers or are citizens or eligible non-citizens to complete the FAFSA now. The FSA ID now, my apologies, not the FAFSA, that's in December. Complete the FSA ID now. Now is the time. However, if the student is a citizen or an eligible non-citizen, and here's my sensitive caveat, but the parent is undocumented or the parent does not have a valid social, we encourage those students to pause and to create their FSA ID in December. The feds have shared that they don't have a process right now for setting up the FSA IDs at this moment for students who are citizens or eligible non-citizens who have parents that are undocumented. In other words, parents that don't have a social. If those parents try to complete an FSA ID now with using a TIN number or entering 000 the way they've been historically instructed to do, the federal government may need to verify their identity because it's unknown what their identity is. And the last thing that you want is an undocumented person receiving a call from the federal government to document their status. And we don't want to create an unsafe space for any student or any parent. So I realize that it is not the student's advantage to wait until December, but that is the best thing that we can guide at this point, understanding that there is a lot that we are waiting for the federal government to provide, including the FAFSA. We're waiting for that form. It hasn't come out yet. And also the FSA ID process that is available right now, and students can do it right now, and parents can do it right now if they have valid socials. If they do not, I encourage those students to wait until the FAFSA is released. The federal government has declared that when the FAFSA is released in December, that the FSA ID availability and functionality will be set up so that even undocumented parents can go ahead, log in, and have an FSA ID created. But at this moment, it's not set up. So I'll just repeat one last time. If the students are citizens and the parents are as well, or they have a valid social, you can go ahead and start the FSA ID process now. If the parents do not, I don't recommend that they start that now until December when it launches. All right, so as I've shared, students, parents need a valid social to start the FSA ID. I do recommend that all have their social security card ready, especially the students when they're completing the FAFSA application, because sometimes if the student misspells their name, omits a middle name, and if it's their legal name, or omits the year or a social security, one of the numbers or digits, it can create a delay with the processing of their financial aid. So we often say have these forms ready for you and have them handy so that you are able to move forward without any delays and have all of the information be consistent and be accurate. So another change that's coming is that the federal government now requires the FSA ID not only for the student, but for the parent. Please note that the federal government is no longer using the terminology of parent 1 and parent 2. Now it's contributor 1 and contributor 2. So basically each contributor and the student has to have their FSA ID, their email and password to start. And similar to forms that you've seen here at Cal State Fullerton, where it routes to one signer and then routes to the next signer and then to the next one to sign, that's a change to the FAFSA as well. So it's supposed to be simplified or a better process because of that. Students can complete it and route it and sign it, send it to one parent to go ahead and complete their portion of the FAFSA, and then go ahead and link to the IRS and then sign it with their FSA ID, and then link to the second contributor parent if needed, if the parents didn't file jointly. So just keep in mind that some students will go through signing the FAFSA, moving the information from the IRS to the FAFSA form for themselves, sending it then to the second contributor who has to remember their ID, FAFSA, email, and all of that, and then enter their information and consent for the information to go from the IRS to the FAFSA form. And if applicable, it'll go to the second contributor, the second parent, to do the same, login, FAFSA ID, email, passwords, all of that, and then consent for the IRS information to go on to the FAFSA. Now, please note that if any of the parents decide not to complete the FAFSA information of transfer from IRS to the FAFSA, then it is considered an invalid FAFSA for the purposes of aid determination, and that student will not qualify for any financial aid. Please keep in mind that these are federal standards and federal regulations that are changing, and that we're doing our best to communicate these changes. We know that some of these changes can, even though they're supposed to be simplification and better FAFSA, can create some complexities for some folks where technology may not be their strength, or building up different emails, or creating different IDs, or just even remembering all of these things. So we realize and acknowledge that for some folks, this can be a hindrance to access. So we just want to share what this is so that you help us communicate with students, and that it's not a hindrance and it's not a barrier. And that students can just realize if their parents don't have an email, got to help my parents set up their email accounts, got to help them with their authentication, and so on and so forth. It's supposed to be better and simplified, but I understand for some folks it may not be the case for them. So thank you for helping us to help students and help parents as well. I think I mentioned that it'll route to each contributor, and each one will be expected as applicable to consent to having the information from the IRS to the FAFSA application. Again, this is where that term better FAFSA is coming from, that it's supposed to have the exact information from the IRS and create less conflicting information when it comes to financials, which delays the process.
Hi, Jessica, and I also would like to add that on the topic of the FSA ID, we've created a video that is up on our YouTube account now. If you scan the QR code on your screen, you'll be taken straight to that video, and you're welcome to share it with any of your students, families, you name it, who need some additional support. It's about a 5 to 6 minute video that will just walk you through the process of creating an FSA ID. So this, as Jessica mentioned, is what we're encouraging those who are able to complete an FSA ID now to create one, to do so now, because the process to create an FSA ID, we're expecting it to take between 1 to 3 days for that verification process to be complete. So the sooner students who haven't already created an FSA ID, the sooner they can complete that process now, the better. So you're welcome to share this video with any of your students. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you so much, Marco. And if you're like me and you have the little box with all of the folks and faces, it's to your right. So it's covering that QR code, but feel free to just move the box with all of the folks so that you can see that QR code, scan it, and have access to that video on ABC step 1, 2, 3 on how to create an FSA ID. Our Office of Financial Aid, again, is creating content to make sure that we make this process as seamless as possible, knowing that there is more that students may need to do. We're creating the avenues, communication, and content to guide our students accordingly. All right. So more on the collaboration and timeliness that's required here. We ask that you help us promote the FAFSA and the CADAA webinars that are in November. So you're going to see those on our website soon. I'll be sending them out with our campus partner updates so that you can help us communicate. We'll also be sending an email to the student body at large, letting them know the dates for these November webinars. And we'll be sending those out next week, the last week of October. So please know that we are going to be having a strong push and drive for student support, student contact, and it's going to be in person, it's going to be via Zoom, and it's all meant to let students know that we are here with them and that we are here to guide them and support them through those changes. Also, please help us promote the FAFSA and California DREAM Act completion in December. We don't know when in December it's going to come out, but the main objective of this line is to say, don't promote the deadline of April 2nd, but promote the launching month. So for example, if it's launching in December, have students, before they come back from that holiday break in January, that FAFSA, that California DREAM Act, that has to be done. Make sure that it's completed, because unfortunately, if students wait to the last day and we're promoting the completion day of April 2nd, and somebody got stuck somewhere with one of the parents or one of the contributors with an FSA ID, with an email, with a password, or something isn't going well, and they miss that deadline, especially our dreamers, they're not going to be eligible for any aid. So rather than any of our students being in that situation, let's promote December, the holiday break, or whatever that's going to be, and making sure that if they had any questions or hiccups in the process, we can speedily help them and readily help them in January. So please also promote scholarship requests that are timely, and just keep in mind that we have Titan A payment deadlines, and those are deadlines that students need to pay their tuition and their fees by, or they can face a disenrollment. Why am I sharing that now? Because the Office of Financial Aid is going to be spending so much time on FAFSA simplification, and we often receive late scholarship requests. And when we receive late scholarship requests, that's already putting a dent and a delay and a negative experience for some students. They're not seeing the transparency of where that aid is. I was supposed to get this by then. How come you awarded this, but this is not there yet? So just keep in mind that a lot of folks are looking at scholarships as let's just give more to students and let's do more to students, but they don't understand that there's a process and a timeline for scholarships. And if it's not on the timeline, it actually isn't going to help students the way that you're intending for it to help students, especially with MCS 2.0. One of the programs that the state of California just revamped for this current aid year of 2023-24, when a late scholarship was received, we saw an impact to that MCS award. And why? Is that the case with all financial aid awards? No, it's not. But with MCS, according to the legislature and the way that that was passed, it's considered a last payer. So because it's a last payer, it's a need-based award based on being the last payer. So if another one comes in after that, well, then MCS will adjust to make sure that they're the last payer and account for anything that came in after that. So please keep in mind that we want to help our students. So part of that is being timely and understanding that the Office of Financial Aid is going to be focusing for 2024-25 on FAFSA simplification and trying to get our awards out as quickly as possible. So that brings me to my last point. Please, no special requests to accommodate lateness or tardiness from departments. We often get those each year. But please understand that this year we're going to diligently focus on FAFSA simplification. And in a nutshell, anytime the federal government has rolled out a brand new plan, there's always a lot involved and anything can happen at any time. So just know that we want to be ready for that and we want to be nimble to pivot to support our students and not necessarily a lot of little requests that are coming here and there that can throw us off kilter. We don't want that to happen. So thank you for just following these timely requests, especially when it comes around scholarships. That's still an area that in the Office of Financial Aid, we're trying to make sure that we hone in and guide all of our campus on following the deadlines, especially because something new came up called MCS 2.0 that is a last payer. And that definitely affects students and can affect their scholarship. So please make sure to honor your donors by making sure that their intent is followed and the student receives all of their aid and all of their scholarship. And that only happens when we follow timelines and that all of the aid is coordinated up front so that when it's dispersed 2 weeks before the beginning of class, nothing comes in after that if it's not needed. If not needed, sometimes need because there's stipends and there's projects that they do and what have you, but as much as possible, let's try to avoid that because once the aid is dispersed, then that's when scholarships can be impacted. So thanks for allowing me to make that little plug on that. We're not going to be accommodating special requests because it takes a lot of time. They can actually harm students by decreasing their MCS award, and it takes away from the Office of Financial Aid being able to focus on FAFSA simplification and all of the extra work, all of the extra face-to-face time, all of the extra one-on-one time that's going to be required in order to help all of us, our students succeed. So we ask you to do your part, which is to help us with supporting student FSA ID and help us to do your part by sending scholarship requests in a timely manner. And then we will do all of our part to prepare our students for the FAFSA simplification California Dream Act application and guide them through that process. So thank you so much again, everyone, for being here. Thank you for your support. Thank you for understanding that this is a really big endeavor we're about to take on and that all of our efforts and all of our time and all of our attention are going to be moving towards this. I do want to share that typically we award financial aid in March for our new and continuing students, but just keeping in mind that Oracle, which is the company that is creating the packaging solutions that are going to be given to the CSU as a system to then package and provide to each of the CSUs individually, like Cal State Fullerton, is going to be happening at the beginning of the spring. And then after that, a lot of testing will be required. So it is unlikely that this year we are going to be able to provide awards in March, but we are aware that students, many students, transfer students, new high school students, they need their financial aid awards by May 1st. And that's the national deadline that students decide which school they're going to go to. So it is our endeavor to work as diligently as possible and as arduously as possible with so much commitment and heart for our students to have that by that date. But just know that at this moment, we're looking at May, June, and we are thinking creatively. Our campus leaders care very much about what's happening in this regard. Our provost, our VP of IT, our VPSA, our president, and we are working diligently to ensure that we have communication, that we have a plan in place, that we have timelines, and that we're thinking creatively to be able to award all students as soon as possible. And your support is going to come in with helping students with the FSA ID process. Please help us with that, and we'll help with the application process and helping us with making timely requests to the Office of Financial Aid, knowing that we will not be able to accommodate special requests or late requests in the 2024-25 year, so that we focus on supporting students and not hindering them in the process, and try to get out all of our awards as soon as possible. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and conclude this presentation.